Sponsor a child from the Dogon villages today. They are the future healers, leaders and preservers of Kemetic traditions. Just like Prophet Nebnaba, these children of the Earth Center and our network of healers are being educated in local schools in addition to their indigenous cultural practices and traditions. This comprehensive education both positions them to inherit the work of their forefathers and mothers and continues bridging the gap between traditional and modern societies. So go ahead, support, find out more about our campaigns and donate by going to www.theearthcenter.org. Thank you.
Ujjayi, and welcome to the Wisdom of the Nile show. And my name is Nahibsa Nesibik, alongside.
Bujai everyone, this is Kasati Hekama.
Yeah, as we say, welcome to the Wisdom of the Nile show, and we would just like to say duawu for all those who have tuned in, and we appreciate your, tuning into our show, and we hope that we can try to make it as informative as possible for you. First of all, we want to acknowledge the divine world, the ones who created the existence, and we also want to acknowledge the ancestors, those that has given permission, or they are the intermediate between this dimension and the divine world. So we acknowledge our ancestors, and we also want to acknowledge Master Nebnaba Musa Moran Lenebig, the founder of the Earth Center. Today is the 24th of Penit, of 421 of the Gregorian, of the Kemetic Sidereal calendar, and it's actually the 3rd of November 2021 of the Gregorian. And the deity that kind of governs this month is the goddess Mahata, and she is the goddess that actually judge, of truth, justice, and the cosmic harmony. She's also associated with the 42 negative confession, and also she's also the one that's actually kind of lead the newly judged to the judgment hall. So we acknowledge this day, that this is a Kemetic spiritual day, a Kemetic day in the calendar, and each week we'll try to kind of say, just keep you in tune, really, in relation to the Gregorian calendar and the Kemetic calendar, really, because it's really important for us to kind of say stay in tune. It's a part of our history. It connects us back to nature, so for those who want to kind of say to follow and to keep in harmony with the calendar, you can purchase the calendar, we'll give out the website and things later on. And so Kasati, she's just basically going to give you, first of all, I'm going to give you just a little breakdown of the Earth Center. The Earth Center is actually constructed in three different branches. We have the Firefly Department branch, which that deals with the publication of all the magazines, the Philosophy Podium, the 77 Commandments. So Firefly deals with all that literature side, and they publish it. So that's the department that you want to get any of our books, things like that. We've also got the project in Merita, and that is basically dealing with digging of new wells for fresh water. It's dealing with maintaining the traditional farming techniques, restorations of temples and things like that. And it's also, Project Merita is also dealing with the Children Project. We've also got the third branch, which is the Umtam. That's where we do the initiation. Basically, initiation take place through there. In the Umtam branch there, we go through 3 different subjects. Medu, basically, which covers philosophy, languages, the Medu language, which the Greeks call the hieroglyphs. We've also got the Katibi, which is where we learn about our spirituality, meditation, yoga. Katibi, in there, you learn how to basically purify yourself, doing your ablutions, learning the prayers, which are over 75,000 years old, these prayers that we learn. and we recite them in the actual Medu language, Medu Ma'it language, because there's two tiers to the Medu. And then we have like the Sunt. In that class, we learn about how to heal the body, how to maintain the body using natural kind of methods, non-invasive to the human body, using herbs and things to help to kind of maintain the body. And so those three classes basically give you 360 degrees of, the universe and how to kind of say balance ourselves within everything that's going on. So from there, we're gonna go over to Kasati, which this week's topic basically, we've just come out of Black History Month, so to speak, although we know that Black History Month goes beyond that. So Kasati is actually going to give you like a breakdown basically of how this came about and the significance of how it's actually playing in our evolution, really, as Black people. Over to you.
Okay, Hujai everyone. Yeah, so this show is dedicated to Nebnaba Lamusa Moran Denibig as a part of the UK's Black History Month. I know that in America they have, and the Caribbean, I believe they have Black History Month in February. But in the UK, the Black History Month was celebrated in October. It began being celebrated in October 1987, which was the year of the 150th anniversary of the Caribbean emancipation. 1987 was also the centenary of the birth of Marcus Garvey, and it was also the 25th anniversary of the Organization of African Unity, which is commonly termed as the OAU, which is an institution that was dedicated to advancing the progress of African states. So 1987 was also the year that the African Jubilee Declaration was launched. In the UK, the local and national governments recognise the contributions of Africans to the cultural and economic and political life of London and the UK. So as part of this celebration in 1987, Maulana Karenga, the person who created the Kwanzaa celebration, he was invited over from the USA on the 1st of October to mark the contribution of Black people throughout history. And it was upon that the organizer, a Ghanaian called Akiaba Adai Sebo, formulated the October as the Black History Month in the UK. Now, as we know, there's no such thing as 1 month to be celebrating our vast and varied history. Every day is Black history to us. So in the UK, as I said, it's celebrated in October, and yes, now we're in November, it matters not because every day is Black history, so we won't even get caught up in those semantics at all. So we decided to, as I said, celebrate or give people who do not know anything about Nebnaba Lamusa Mora Denibig, who was a Dogon high priest and master healer, for the historical feat that he's been achieving and has achieved through forming the institution, the Earth Center, which Nahibsa just told you a little bit about. But the Earth Center is an organization, it's a spiritual organization that was established with the knowledge and authority, with the permission of Dogon royalties, elders and ancestors. And Master Naba was and has been the only authentic Dogon master and high priest to establish an institution to initiate people outside of Merita. Merita is the Kemetic word meaning beloved land, for the land of the continent, I should say, which the West calls Africa. So Master Naba sacrificed and took risks to bring this knowledge to us, knowledge that has been preserved for over thousands and thousands of years. So this is today is going to be that. This is the show today. We're going to have a few initiates who's going to be calling in, and or actually we'll be calling them for them to give their testimony about the impact that the Earth Center and Master Naba's works have how it's benefited them or impacted their lives. So what we're going to do is read, because it doesn't make sense creating a wheel if the wheel already invented. So the Earth Center has a wonderful site, www.theearthcenter.org, center spelled CENTER. So there's a lot of information about this organization on the website, and we're going to quickly go through this before we call in our guest for this evening. So over to you, Nahipsa.
Do the history? Yeah, so this is the history of the Dogons. And we're saying approximately 2,500 years ago, during the invasion of the Nile Valley region, which is like what they would call as ancient Egypt, the bloodlines in charge of the highest echelons of knowledge decided to migrate, from the area in order to preserve the integrity of the knowledge itself. Now they use the Sahara Desert as a line of defense because the invaders were not capable of surviving the challenging climate and conditions. So over centuries, these bloodlines migrated across the territories known as Sudan, Chad, and the Niger, eventually settling across the buckle of the Niger River, and then venturing into various territories like throughout West Africa. Now, these families are what we call like the Dogons. And since then, the knowledge has been preserved, and protected in humble villages, like, through a rigid education system, similar what we go through initiation here, but more intense. And to acquire this knowledge, the Dogon youths, they have to undergo like initiation, which teaches them how to harmonize with nature. Now, the Dogon initiation is what modern anthropologists, they would call like the secret societies, or like the mystery school. And so to protect the initiation, the Dogon bloodlines, they decided to no longer build elaborate grand structures, similar to the ones that they built in the Nile Valley, which brought like attention like to the invaders. So they came to the conclusion that such material structure are not requirement to live a spiritual life of quality. So they decided instead to focus more like on their spiritual evolution.
So a brief history about the founder himself, the founder of the Earth Center, Neb Naba Lamusa Moradenibig. So Master Naba was a Goromanchi from the Fada Ngoma, which is a city in eastern Burkina Faso. The Goromanchi are a subset of the larger Dagomba people, also known as the Dogon. So Master Naba began spiritual initiations at the age of 8, and as a young boy, he progressed through the Dogon initiations while also attending colonial schools. As he grew older, Master Naba excelled in the initiation and also attended university in Kenya. He eventually achieved the highest rank of priesthood, and as a Dogon high priest and master healer, he traveled extensively from temple to temple, increasing his spiritual knowledge and dedicated his life to cultural activism. He is revered worldwide as an authority in the fields of healing, spirituality, astronomy, parapsychology, metaphysics, sociology, psychology, philosophy, and geomancy. The Master Naba recognized that the modern lifestyle has proved itself to be detrimental and destructive to humanity and its environment. So, unable to sit back and watch as people continued down this self-destructive path, he looked for a solution. He knew that to expose spiritual knowledge, he knew that exposure to spiritual wisdom and knowledge would present humanity the opportunity to live a life of quality. So he sat down with the Dogon royalty and the elders of his people and pleaded with them to permit him to bring forth the Dogon spiritual wisdom and knowledge and the culture to the diaspora and the outside world. Master Naba was granted that permission to lift the veil of secrecy for the first time since the invasions, providing access to the first level of Dogon initiation system. And as I said before, he's the only Dogon master and high priest with the knowledge and authority and permission from the Dogon royalty and elders to establish this institution that initiates people outside of Merita. So during his lifetime, Master Naba visited many countries, and his presence was constantly requested in many of the temples and holy places around the world. He spoke 13 languages. One of them was Medu. Medu is what the West calls Egyptian hieroglyphs, and it's also humanity's oldest language. So he learnt that during his Dogon initiation. And on the 21st of July 2008, Master Naba transitioned to the Imentet, which is the Kemetic word for the world of the dead. And from there, he still continues to guide his legacy. And he dedicated his life to educating people on humanity's original spiritual principles. And it's by his effort that various treasures of the Nile Valley civilization has been available to the world again after being hidden for more than 2,500 years.
Now, the Naba's legacy, Neb Naba's legacy in fulfilling the heritage of his forefathers, Master Naba dedicated himself to research and acquiring knowledge that would serve in the upliftment of humanity. The Naba family is a bloodline of researchers, priests and temple caretakers, historically known for traveling to other villages and territories, spreading the knowledge and wisdom of the traditional indigenous science they have preserved. So in 1980, Master Naba joined forces with other cultural activists inspired by work taking places under Thomas Sankara, cultural revolution in Burkina Faso. And Master Naba started a cultural preservation organization called KEPEERA. Now, KEPEERA's goal was to protect traditional culture from modernization, while at the same time promoting extensive research by the initiatic youth into the legacy of the Kemetic original African civilization. Now, Master Naba continued to research around the continent of Africa, visiting many temples and sacred sites to learn more. He crossed the Sahara Desert from south to north and from west to east many times in pursuit of reclaiming Kemetic knowledge. He traveled to Germany and spent time studying Kemetic ancient Egyptian texts that have been pillaged from the Nile Valley. Now, everywhere Master Naba traveled, his quality and knowledge attracted people who wished to study with him. But the political surveillance he received in Germany for being able to read the hieroglyph led to his decision to start establishing his international organization elsewhere.
So after attending a conference at the famous African Film Festival in Ouagadougou about the state of the communities of the African diaspora and the inequalities they faced in the United States, he was inspired to bring his work there. So in the mid-1990s, with the permission and blessings of the kingships and his elders, Master Naba established the Earth Center in 1996, and the headquarters was established in Chicago with the goal of providing authentic education to humanity in a place where it is so very needed. The Earth Center in the USA, I believe, and I've just got to double check that, there's actually 6 branches, and in Master Naba's son, Naba Irita, brought initiation and the Earth Center to the UK in 2014, and there are now 2 branches in the UK. I'm going to read an article by Naba Irita Shenmira, Master Naba's son, before we move on. It's a very important story to read, and it's entitled The Keepsake of the Shrine Keepers. So since the close of Misra, which is the capital of Kemet, located along the Nile Valley River, traditional Kemetic spirituality has lost a major portion of its followers to the Abrahamic beliefs that have not yet ceased their rampage. Long misperceived by many modern believers, to be witchcraft, paganism, and demonic religion, traditional spiritual practices of the mother of civilizations continue to survive. It is essential that novice believers, adepts, initiates, disciples, and pilgrims understand that the existential realities existing before the birth of the sun, the moon, and the stars, spiritual rituals such as fasting, cleansing, daily prayers, offerings, and sacrifices, pilgrimages to sacred sites, grand ceremonies honoring the deities and the gods, and the worship of the ancestral spirit, along with the spirits of trees, rivers, mountains, and forests, have always been the bedrock of all spiritual practices. The detachment and seclusion of certain lines and clans, known by the name Naba, was necessary for the maintenance of the spiritual professionalism amongst the ranks of humanity. The following story has not been heard by modern ears outside of our initiations. It reveals how the powerful temples of the Naba bloodline were preserved and came to be revered as the paramount temples of the Gulmu Dagomba Dogon Kingdom. Since the beginning of civilization, every family has been entrusted with a speciality, enabling its members to heal a specific ailment or make a specific contributions towards the survival or well-being of humanity. Since then, the Naba bloodlines have been known as the Shrine Temple Keepers, holding the responsibility for all activities regarding astronomy, Kemetic science, philosophy, spirituality, and geomancy. The Nabas are referred to as the intermediaries between humans and the divine world. Devoted to this duty, the bloodline has been initiating every one of its descendants to carry on the legacy of the very first ancestors of the bloodline, those called the patriarchal ancestors. These initiations have been going on since that time, from father to son, from mother to daughter, from mouth to ears, and from generation to generation, and they continue to the present day. The name Naba is a very old name. It comes from the Medu word Neb, which means priests. We are a long line of priests. The modern believer can verify that in the Bible one can read, "The only people that the children of Israel listened to and bowed to are the Nabateans." You can study one of the many historical civilizations of the Nabateans which existed right to present-day Arabia. The name in Arabia for prophet is Anaba or Anebi. The history is there. So the story I'm about to tell is a story that has been told since our very first ancestors. This story provides a clear understanding to whoever seeks to understand how the temples of the Nabas have become the most powerful and essential temples for not only the kings, prophets and pharaohs of Kemetic society, but for any person looking for spiritual salvation and redemption. The Naba temple elevates any pilgrim or worshipper who brings their wishes and kneels before the deities that dwell within it. During the time of the Greco-Roman invasions, to avoid having their essential knowledge fall into the hands of barbarians, our Naba ancestors were asked to migrate with all the knowledge that will preserve humanity, all of the knowledge that enables humanity to achieve. They migrated towards Western Merita in order to protect their culture. Over many generations of migrations, avoiding the invaders in their relentless usurpation of wealth and knowledge, the Nabas travelled through the desert, creating settlements in Chad, before continuing towards the Jaliba or Niger River Valley. They eventually settled in the Jaliba River. Throughout history, there have been many attempts to take the knowledge and deities away from us. Many attempts made to separate us from our customs and cultural responsibilities. Many of the Nabas from generation to generation resisted these attempts. Most of them sacrificed their lives and their families to be able to protect and preserve all of the knowledge that the line has been safe keeping, in spite of the invaders and their ambitions. Long ago, amidst this historical backdrop, there were two kings who possessed two antagonistic yet divine powers. The first was the king of our ancestral nome. The second was a king who was coming to invade our ancestral lands. When he came to invade, he was accompanied by his warriors. His army fought for many days, but were unsuccessful in conquering the nomes, which were home to the temples kept by the Naba bloodline. As one can imagine, after such an intense battle, warriors on both sides were tired and wounded. The high priest Nabamuri and his disciples came to support these weary warriors. When they came to assist, instead of bringing relief aid to their own people first, they went and gave assistance to the invaders. The priest stated, "We know you're coming to destroy us, but our principles and our gods are against inhospitality and deprivation of subsistence. So we have brought you some water, milk, and food to nourish you and your people." The invading king and his people were surprised and astonished. They had thought that the priests were going to support their own kings and people first. Nabamori said, "Every human being stands equal in front of the divine. We are the intermediaries between humans and the divine. We stand on the principle of gods, not in allegiance to the authority of any particular kings." Shocked, the invading king and his people accepted the supplies and took care of themselves. Afterwards, the foreign king took off his crown and placed it on the ground. All of the divine powers and deities that he had, powers passed down to him by his predecessors, he removed them all and put them in the crown. With this act, the king had shown his allegiance to the knowledge, abilities, and position of the priest as an intermediary to the divine. Then the other king, after seeing all that had transpired, completed the action. He took the invading king's crown and all the supernatural things within it, put it all inside his royal crown, and all the divine powers and deities were added together. They then made a pact that no other king has a right to fight all of the kings, will have to kneel down in front of the priests of this temple because of what you have done. As long as you Nabas know how to take care of this responsibility, all of the kings will have to bow to you to have legitimacy in front of humans and gods. To this day, that is why all the legitimate kings of the Gulmuda Gomba regions kneel down in front of the Nabas. The Nabas don't bow before a king. For any king to have legitimacy in front of their people and the gods, that king has to show allegiance to the temple of the Nabas, just as their ancestors have done before them. The crowns and the amulets that they put together that day have been kept in the Naba temples for all of the kings around the world. This is what remains in the Gulmu regions for the whole world to benefit from. Many millennia have passed since the temples have been closed in order to preserve the knowledge and power from the ambitious or pretentious leaders of today. Now the Nabas from the Dogon tribe have been granted permission from the ancestors and the divine world to reopen their temples in order to assist humans in resisting the degeneration of the modern era. So I think I'm going to end this here and know that the Earth Center is a place for us humans to go in order to go through initiation to raise our spiritual qualities. And this is the ancestral legacy carried by Nebnaba Lamusa Morin Denabig when he was sent to the diaspora with a mission to establish the Earth Center schools and reconnect those interested in their original spiritual culture. So, as I said, we're going to invite some of the initiates today to express their experiences of initiation and the works that Master Naba has brought to the world.
I mean, the well for that, Tenti, but again, I just wanted to add something on because we've seen within our history that we've had many people professing to be leaders, and Zeshmi was posed a question from his Kemetic slavery lecture about leaderships in today's world, and he said that we need to invest in our own spiritual education, because one don't just become a leader, you have to follow to be a leader, to be good and to follow. So today's leaders now is about ambitions and are without any spiritual evolution. So their speeches only reflect their ambitions and not any spiritual reality that humans face. So we must first invest in our own spiritual growth before we can lead others. Now, for me, that was like, a lot of our people has been led in directions, and in initiation, there's a topic that we have discipline and disciple, and so what Atinisa Kasati just read out, like the history of the Nabas, we can see that they've had a history there. So whatever they're passing down and Master Naba is giving to us it's been tried and tested over generations, really. So, you know, there's a certain amount of credibility there, as opposed to people with, you know, big egos. And you know, some probably start off with good intention, but power overwhelms sometimes, really. And we're led in directions. And the thing about the initiation is that it gives us the tools sometimes, or well, no, it gives us the tools that we need to for the experiences that we're going to face out there. And so, as I said, we have a lot of leaders out there, but they're leading the people. But what are the tools that are they giving the people that they're going to be able to sustain themselves? You know, and this is what the initiation are important and valuable it is to us, really. You know, so from there, you wanna.
No, we need to move on and call in our guest.
We're gonna play this.
First guest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do our whole thing.
You're listening to Bless, Bless, Bless. And this is George. Look, saying keep it locked, keep it locked, keep it locked.
Ushaye.
Okay.
Yes, it's easy to do that. Ushaye Sen, are you there? Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, excellent, excellent. So, welcome to the Wisdom of the Nile show.
Yes, duau.
Yes, could you please introduce yourself to the listeners?
Yes. My name is Ronnie, and I am an initiate at the Houston Temple in the United States.
Okay. So, Ronnie, how long have you been in initiation?
Well, it's an interesting question. So, if you're talking about from the point that I started class, that was about the end of December last year, so end of December 2020. But I like to say that my initiation started once I found out about the EC and realized that it was something that I needed to to walk towards, or really run towards.
So,
And that was around March of 2020.
So how did
Yeah, I
you
was a
find?
mate.
Sorry, go on.
Oh, go ahead. What were you gonna say?
No, no, continue. Sorry.
Oh, okay. I was just gonna say that I was made aware of the EC by an initiate who was in the Jersey school, and that came at a time when I was so I was having this pull towards family, like reconnecting with family. This is at the beginning of 2020, in January, and I was planning on I was in Malaysia at the time, and I was planning on returning to the States to visit my grandfather, because his mind was still really sharp. His health wasn't strong at the time, but his mind was really sharp, and I wanted to learn more about the family. And shortly after that, maybe a month later, he passed away. And this came at the time where the COVID restrictions were just coming into place, so I wasn't able to fly home. I wasn't even to join my family to see him off. And shortly after that, that's when I was made aware of the Earth Center. As I mentioned, that initiate sent me a video. That was actually the one that you mentioned, the Kemetic slavery video, and I watched it. And to be honest, when I was first watching it, I was just like, oh, this is just more another Kemetic organization. Just talking all this Black revolutionary stuff. So I was a little turned off initially, because I was very familiar with a lot of the groups particularly in the United States, that I felt were just like a response to, the colonial system. But I kept listening. Actually, the first day I actually fell asleep on it. But I listened again the next day because of the person who sent it to me. I was like, let me give this a full listen. And I ended up listening to the whole thing. And when it got to the end, what hooked me was when the Zeshmi was saying that there was a book, and that's the Philosophy Podium book.
Yeah.
And he said that it was the first book written by a Dogon about the Dogon. And I had some understanding of who the Dogon was. Of course, a lot of that still was coming from the colonial perspective, but I knew that there was a lot more to it than what what was given on the surface. So I was very interested in that. When you think about people who were able to observe things that technology today, or that took technology a really long time to be able to do the same, as speaks to a lot that's sitting underneath that. And so I recognize that about, when I would hear things like this about, these bush tribes in Africa, where people would, where a lot of institutions would go to, or scientists would go to figure things out. And so that really caught my attention, that, okay, here's something written by the people who are usually being talked about. And so I started, consuming a lot of the material on the Earth Center's, on their YouTube channel. And that just led to listening to a bunch of interviews. And oh my gosh, after that, I was hooked. I was just completely hooked. It took maybe about 3 days. And I was just on a roll. And so from that point, that's where I sort of feel like for my initiation started. So that's just a long way to answer, to tell you when I felt like my initiation started.
yeah.
So how was that assisted you on the way, though? Like, say, coming into it, getting exposed to this knowledge, and then seeing what's happening around in the world now. How has that kind of been able to kind of balance yourself?
I'm sorry, say that one more time?
No, I'm saying with what's going on in the world now, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How has this information, helped to balance, you in what's going on?
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. I think it helps put it in a better context, in a different context than I would put it in otherwise. So I think the big one is just not not being thrown around emotionally. And that's something that I had been about a decade cycle of. I would go from, you know, this attitude of, oh, we are all one, to like all black everything. So it's, I would be like this black revolutionary for a couple years, and then I'd be like, you know, this world ambassador where we're all just one people. It just kind of get thrown back and forth with how to fit myself into the world. And that was tough, and it ended up that's why I ended up in Southeast Asia. I just ended up leaving the States because the environment there was disturbing me that much, and I had that feeling for a very long time. I remember as far back as high school, having the feeling of needing to disassociate myself from people in order to develop myself. Even as a young high school kid, I recognized that in myself. At the time, I had it associated with something different because I think I was really into Christianity at that time. I think that's when I became like a devout Christian. But it was still the understanding that there's something in me that needed to develop. And that I needed to be in the proper environment in order to develop that. And I didn't really, it took a long time for me, obviously, to get there. But I think ultimately what the initiation has done is it's given me a proper context in which to see the world and engage in the world. And it's been essential for me to move forward and evolve in that way, because I can really feel the difference in the way that I'm responding to just the challenges of life and the things that are going on in the world.
And that, can I presume that's based on the tools that you've been given in initiation and the knowledge that you've received?
Yeah, absolutely. The initiation, it's been a big time of introspection and challenge, really. A lot of the knowledge, a lot of the information that we get, one of the challenges are trying to see a lot of the principles that we talk about, and then also like applying those things in your life.
Definitely.
And in doing that, it's like you have to face yourself.
That's right.
And so a lot of the fears that you have, a lot of the pains, even the comforts that you have, the attachments that you have to, comforts or previous ideas that you held, all those things kind of come to the foreground. And it's just, you have to face those things and deal with it, because it might be antagonistic to what you're being exposed to in the initiation. But as you said earlier, Hatani, that exposure presents an opportunity. And so I think that's gonna look differently for each initiate, because we're all on different paths, we're on different journeys, and so that's gonna look different for each initiate. But ultimately, the people getting into initiation, they're being presented with an opportunity to do something about their life in the way of evolution.
Absolutely. So I know you've probably heard this saying in initiation that the world is not your challenge, you are its own challenge. So what prompted you to leave the United States and go to Malaysia? What made you come back to Malaysia, to the States?
It was this show was a part of it. This show was a big part of that journey, actually. A lot of the shows that you had with Naba Irata, it really, again, just the information, the perspective, it just something in me recognized it. It just made so much sense. And it was something I had been looking for since 2010. I think in 2010 is when I started that journey of really trying to find, African spirituality from our people. And I couldn't find it for a very long time. I got close. I was in the neighborhood because I think the first thing I was looking at was it was a man and a woman, Sabonfu Some and Maladoma Some, who are
Yeah.
also from like that Burkina Faso area. And I was reading some of their books, and you know, they focus on the same thing. It's nature based and focuses on ancestry, but I guess it just wasn't the time, and there wasn't anything to do with that. It was just information.
Yeah.
And I think that's the importance of what Master Naba has done, is establish this organization where like you can actually do something about this. There's if you are trying to, you know, fit yourself back into, or if you find that you're feeling called to, I almost want to say to return, but if there's that inner calling within you, that something's trying to be expressed, I feel like the doors of initiation are where that transformation can begin to happen.
Yeah.
And so that's the importance of the institution. Is just like it's really a beacon for those who are looking for that.
Absolutely. It's been called a bridge.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bridge to bring us back home. You know. So
But also though the teaching though, because you see how how often people go back home and they struggle to fit back into the culture, fit back into the community, and initiation assist and help to prepare for that, so you get to understand the culture for what it is. And pilgrimage is an enforcement, so you get the opportunity to actually go and experience that. So it's that preparation leading towards that transition back, really. And it's given us that, where, you know, not making comparison, but I think a lot of organizations, this is what's lacking as well. There is not that physical experience that people can have to you know, to take them forward.
so yeah, Ronnie. So we're gonna ask you to leave your last parting thoughts or words of inspiration to the listeners, please.
Oh yes, absolutely. You know, one of my favorite. So in the initiation, being in initiation, we get to hear a lot of stories about Master Naba, Nebnama Lamu Samoran Dinabig, and he is a huge inspiration to me. Something about the things that he says and the words that he writes, it connects with me so deeply that I feel like I wrote those words sometimes. And one of those, I'll try to keep this one brief. And I'll just tell you one of the quotes that we got from about Master Naba one time was this one here, and I wrote this one down to share.
Yeah.
It's spiritual growth isn't something you take your time to do. It has to be a constant obsession. If you have to be obsessed with something, be obsessed with being good. That's a healthy obsession.
Yeah.
And I love that one. One of the things about Master Naba that always strikes me is just, one is his humility, right? Is how humble of a man he was. And another one is just the intelligence. And there's almost like a humility in the intelligence and a simplicity in the intelligence. And even just that word good. When we look at what good and what bad means, remember in one of I was first watching all the videos, just the simple definition that he gives of good and bad. Good being anything that brings you closer to the divine world, that helps you evolve, and bad being anything that keeps you away from it.
Covers all the boundaries, isn't it? Covers everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, it's so simple.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to go all the way over here and have all these debates about this, and it's something that each person can understand for themselves, even in a way. Like we're all on a different path of evolution, but you know what that is for you. You know the decisions that you make on a daily basis that are pushing you towards something or pushing you away from something, and that's it. There's no in between.
Yeah, that's.
And so, like, you can almost even evaluate yourself every single day, every single moment. And so, I love that quote because it just reminds me, and it almost even allows me to really be as obsessive as I can be about that. And because sometimes I think I'm trying to do too much, but I think as long as what I'm doing is about my evolution, and the things that I'm doing are about my evolution, then I'm standing on good ground.
Yeah.
And so I love this quote for that reason.
Yeah.
Duo for that, Ronnie, and duo for your testimony today.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that the Wisdom of the Nile show reached out to you so far away in the world and brought you back for you to go through the initiation and with the knowledge to know thyself.
And duo for the opportunity. And I should have said this at the beginning, but I also just wanted to give thanks to my mother and father, to all my ancestors, and to this organization for just allowing me to even be able to develop that relationship with my ancestors.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And to this show, which was a big part of my journey.
Yeah, duo for that. Yeah.
Right, duo, Ronnie, and all the best with the rest of your initiation.
Yeah, most definitely.
Right, duo.
And I look forward to seeing your graduation.
Okay.
And being there as well.
Okay, Iriru
Alright, duo for the show, yeah.
Etedua.
Yeah. And we're gonna play an interlude and bring in our next guest.
Yeah.
Ujjayi. Okay, Ujjayi. And welcome to the Wisdom of the Nile. TAMEKA, can you introduce yourself, please?
Hello, Ujjayi Hatanis. My name is TAMEKA. I am an initiate out of the Baltimore Temple. And wrapping up the per Ankh level of initiation, I just want to start by, acknowledging you, Hatanis, for having this show, my ancestors, and all of those that came before me, all of those that even laid the
Ujjayi?
Ujjayi, TAMEKA.
Ujjayi, can you hear us? Ujjayi?
One moment, we got some technical difficulties. One moment, please. Ujjayi Senti, you're back.
All right, Ujjayi Hatini.
Okay, then good. You're coming through loud
Okay.
and clear.
So continue, my dear.
I don't know where we cut off, but I was just giving thanks, dual and recognition to all of those that laid the foundation for the Baltimore Earth Center. I see some of my Hatanis are on the call or on listening in. So I also wanted to, give thanks and dual to Neb Nabala Musa Moro Derenbig and all of my ancestors, everyone who, played a part in me even being here today to have this time with you.
So how long have you been in an initiate?
I started classes listening to Sen Ron speak about that. It caused me to reflect a little bit more, but I did start classes last April. So I've been in classes for Per Ankh for about a year and a half now. It's interesting because, I was told about the Earth Center maybe 10 years ago.
Wow.
And I was on my own path. I had grew my locks. I was living Rasta, and someone came and told me, we're having meetings about the Dogon. I'm like, oh no, fire burn that, Rasta, and what a big mistake. So, years go by. I'm still searching, right? Still searching, and I started teaching yoga. And someone from the Earth Center came to a yoga class, and we had like discussions after class. And this person was just, with the way they were speaking, was so profound and familiar yet new. And I was so intrigued, and I'm like, where, are you getting this information from? Who is teaching you? Yeah, and it led me to the Earth Center again. And I said, there's no way I can turn my back at this point.
Wow. So what's been the most impactful part of your journey so far?
The most impactful part is, that's a tough question. You know what? The most impactful part was pilgrimage, actually. Went to pilgrimage earlier this year in April. And, part of the activities there, we get to hear from, the ancestors, the deities, and the Makaru present himself, and to hear him speak and the words that he spoke, it was very clear to me that he knew who I was, and he had been, watching my walk, and he knew why I was even there. So that, I even have chills now thinking about it. That was so impactful for me. And so I continue, to try to keep that relationship, that communication going, because it really helps to build. We've been talking about the individual journey and the self-development. It really helps in that area. And also, definitely, as Hatsuni Nahipsa was saying, this initiation prepared me for the pilgrimage. Everything just made sense. It all added up. And even when I came back, my family was like, I don't know what happened over there, but whatever happened, we like it. So when someone else can see a change in you, I think that speaks volumes.
Absolutely.
So pilgrimage is the most impactful, yeah.
Absolutely. So you mentioned that you was the Rasta before, and now you're an initiate honoring your ancestors. And I know one of the biggest mantras that Rasta used to say, we not deal with dead, and so untrue they are, isn't it?
Oh my gosh, yes. It's really, it's really shameful, and like wondering, why things aren't working out. Like how how do you, disrespect and, have no acknowledge for those who paved the way before you?
Exactly.
Yeah, looking back, I'm like, wow, I was such a fool.
Well, no, you were just growing in your spiritual journey, and everything happens for a reason, doesn't it?
Well, yes, this is true. This is true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, did you have any favorite Macaru quotes or a chapter that you would like to share with the listeners?
I do actually. I would like to share this from the philosophy podium, and because it really helps me, of course, but I think it will help anyone, no matter where they are in their journey. I think it's, really popular to say, be the change you want to see, and, all of these things, but, it's easy to look outside of ourselves and see what is going wrong, right? And the Makaru brought that up. He said, look, you can do that, but the change really starts with you, and it causes for reflection. And I think it was maybe it was the last show that was here on the Wisdom of the Nile when Hatumi Casabez was there speaking. Yeah, it was kind of in this area, and I was thinking maybe I should change it, but it's my favorite area here, so I'm going to read it. Here it goes. It's on page 143 of the Philosophy Podium. And so at the top, there's a quote. It says, "Tell me your goal, and I will tell you if you are a fool." And then later on, it says, "We can now see that when society becomes the goal and purpose of our effort instead of the space of our development, it is the individual that loses. Modern society is simply the greatest distraction ever to the individual. It will sing our glory and reward us as long as we neglect the existential questions that the universe poses. Your ideas about your qualities will be nothing other than the ideas your society assigned to those qualities." And even as, a woman, that really speaks to me because, you gotta get out there and, equal rights, and all of these things. But who am I really as a woman? And what is my true purpose according to my bloodline? So that's the quote that I like from the Makaru that I'd like to share.
Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
So, what kind of inspirational thoughts you would like to share with someone out there who is probably contemplating whether or not they should make that step forward into initiation?
I would say if you're contemplating the thought, it's because, most likely it is because your ancestors are, searching, and they found that you as an individual can actually get them to that knowledge that they've been seeking for so many years. So if that contemplation is there, then it's worth looking into. And like Brother Sen Ron was talking about, YouTube videos would be a great place to start. I would say heed to that. Absolutely.
Excellent. So, do you have any siblings, Tameka?
Do I have any
Siblings.
Statements?
Do you have any brothers and sisters?
Oh, siblings! Yes.
Yeah.
I have an older sister, and I have a younger sister. And interestingly enough, my younger sister struggles with mental issues, and I've been struggling with how to even have a relationship with her. And even coming to the Earth Center has helped me with that, helped me to gain a better understanding of, people, and how we can build relationships in a healthy way. So yes, long story short, I have 2 siblings.
Okay. Well, it's good to hear about the dynamics that's changed in your relationship with your sister, because it is all what we're learning is all about harmonizing with nature, with each other. So it does make a big impact. The work that the
Yes.
Makaru has done, it is reverberating amongst not just the initiates but also our families. And as you said, they notice the change within us, and we can only just be beacons and fireflies at this moment in time to affect change. So dua for your testimony, Senti. We're gonna
Yeah, Duan, for having me.
continue listening and growing. And do you know when your graduation's due?
Soon. I know we have exams coming up at the end of November.
Okay.
So, yeah, maybe this year, but definitely early next year.
Okay. Well, all the best with that, and we'll see you at your graduation.
All right. Dua, Hatinis.
Okay,
Nini,
well,
Iriru, and Netedua.
Irihiru.
Iriru. And from there, we're going to play another interlude of Tumani and Siddiqui Diabati. I'm not sure what this particular tune is. Ujai, Atini, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. And welcome to the Wisdom of the Nile show. KEMEERA, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Greetings, everybody. My name is KEMEERA NIMAHAT. I am an initiate out of the Chicago Temple, and I'm a mother of 3 little people, a wife, and just in pursuit of elevating my quality, my character, and reconnecting to my ancestors and the life that they once lived.
Well, Duau Hatani and Hujai, and welcome back to the Wisdom of the Nile show. And as you know, we're doing this today as part of the Black History Month UK. and just discussing with initiates the impact or the inspiration that the works of Nebnaba Lamusamar and Denebig has had on us as individuals. So I'll hand over back to you to hear what you have to say.
Okay, sure. Yes, thank you again for having me back. And I really just first want to express gratitude to my ancestors for even leading me here. And then secondly, express gratitude to Prophet Naba for having this as an opportunity for people who are looking. Because there's people all over the world looking, being guided for something, or, being guided somewhere, trying to figure out, what is there to life, not really knowing, but knowing that there's something more. And I'm just really grateful that at the point that I was in my questioning and in my journey, the Earth Center was there for me to root myself to and just kind of rebuild my life and my perspective and things of that nature. So the impact and inspiration is so much that it would take a long time to really share everything. Yeah, right. I know that's the same for all of us. But one of the things I can say is that, one, it's been extremely impactful in my parenting. That is where I can see, I don't know if I should say the most impact or whatnot, but a very, very, very strong impact. I was not a parent when I came to the Earth Center. I didn't have children until maybe 3 or 4 years after even encountering the Earth Center. But I've been around children my entire life and, all the things. And so I had, as many of us, ideas about maybe the type of parent that I wanted to be or things that I thought were important when I would begin my parenting journey and things of that nature. And some of those things have definitely stayed, but a lot of it has also changed and shifted. So the fact that my children are fortunate enough to be birthed into this world, and I have the opportunity to understand their destiny and what they're here for as a parent, that's huge. Like, that is huge. And I can't say that I'm doing 100% with that information. Of course, there's always still room for growth and improvement, but understanding that they're here for a reason, and it's not just to fulfill the things that I wasn't able to in my youthhood or in my life or things like that. A lot of times I think as parents, and it's not a judgment, but a lot of times as parents, we want to give our children opportunities that we didn't have, that we desired, and we often want to set them in a particular way or on a particular trajectory in their careers and in their life and in their school and all the things. And again, that's not a bad thing, because as parents, we want to steer and guide our children. But if I have something to anchor my guidance to, which is, one, their father, my husband, and his vision and mission and things like that as the head of the household and the carrier of their bloodline, and then, also their destiny readings, that just opens the door for me as a parent and helps me navigate a little bit more and know the things that they need to stay away from in their life, and that maybe these things that I wanted to introduce to them would actually be more detrimental than not. It also gives me insight into the things that I need to make sure that they are and having a value for, having a value for and an understanding of. And for each child, it's going to be, there's going to be some differences. So I would say that's been hugely impactful in my life, and it's because I had the opportunity to, come into contact with the work of Prophet Naba.
Well, dua for that, Hatani. And if you don't mind, actually, how long have you been an initiate?
I have been an initiate since 2012, May 2012.
Okay, because there obviously there's many people maybe listening that don't actually realize or understand when you refer to the reading and the destiny. So could you just expound upon that, please?
Sure, sure. So, okay, concisely. So the reading that I'm referring to is an earth energy reading in which priests that have been trained and bred in this study and understanding of reading the energies of the earth are able to do that and essentially capture the essence of all of everything that's on the earth. And so when it comes to children being born, we know that children, there's nothing new, right? So they've been here before, they've had experiences in lives and all of the things before. And so now when they're being born, the priests are reading on those energies to see what is it that this ancestor who is returned is coming to sort of accomplish in this life. What are the things that will help propel them toward what their destiny is in this time? Because we're not just here haphazardly. There's a reason that each and every one of us are here. There's a goal, a purpose that each and every one of us has and things that we're here to accomplish. Most of us, unfortunately, do not have awareness of that. But through the earth energy readings, I'm able to receive that information for each child. And then all of that is sort of succinctly captured in the name that the child now goes by. Mm-hmm. And so even every time you're speaking that child's name, even though maybe, we don't think about it every time or they're not thinking about it every time, when that child's name is spoken, it's like, a reminder and like an affirmation almost about, okay, here, this is your name. This is what your name means. So like kind of continuing to push them toward that destiny that they're here to accomplish, reminding them of those things. And so I guess that maybe in short, in very, very short, the name reading that I'm speaking of.
Okay, no, that's too old for that, Hatsuni. Now, could you just say, can non-initiates have that same type of reading for their babies?
Yes, absolutely. Non-initiates can have that same type of name reading. It can be done at birth or even after a child has been born. It can be done, I believe, up until the age of 7. So it's not too late for others who might be interested in getting that clarity about their children. And you'll also even probably be surprised because as you get to know your children, you get to see their personalities, their strengths, their weaknesses, their dispositions, all of that. And then in the name reading, it's like, wow, okay, I kind of already knew that. Like, and now it sort of explains it even deeper and then gives you a more clear roadmap. But to answer your original question, yes, this is something that is accessible to others who are interested, even if they're not in initiation.
Okay, Duahu Hatane, because as you said at the top, I mean, people have children and many of them have children to be an extension of themselves. Many of them have them in order for them to just simply look after them when they get older. And then many people have children and have the state, the society actually directing those children's destinies. So as an initiate, we know the importance of having an earth energy reading and knowing who we are, who we came to be, and what our destinies are. So do all for that. It's very impactful. So was there anything else that you wish to bring to the table here?
I think that's yeah, that's sufficient for me. I mean, like I said, there's a lot of ways I've been impacted and influenced. But yeah, I think what I shared is sufficient for right now. Okay. And my child is now screaming in the background. So I think that's enough.
I was just about to ask you about, I know you're a doula, and so you probably see many, many mothers with their children. And has initiation made you a calmer parent in regards to that self-control?
Yes, I'm actually laughing because, like I said, he's screaming in the background. So, yes, so initiation definitely has made me like I said, I wasn't a parent when I first came to initiation, but I definitely now have the value for how I parent and having patience and tolerance and emotional control. It's actually really, I think it's more apparent sometimes when I'm around others that may not have the same value, and just seeing maybe how we respond to the same situation, the things that are going through my mind, trying to have emotional control and all the things, and juxtaposed against other reactions. So it's something I'm still working on, for sure, but absolutely, yes. And the fact that, when you understand too that these are ancestors, these children that I'm looking at. I have a 6-year-old, a 3-year-old, and an almost 11-month-old child. And all of them are closer to the ancestral realm than me.
Yes.
And that even surfaces in so many ways. Like, there will be like just little tidbits of wisdom that one of them will say in the perfect moment. And you just can't help but humble yourself and listen and reflect, and and just try and do your best. So just having all of that awareness also lets me know, you can't just be going off on your children or mistreating your children or taking things out on them. These are still little beings that are much closer and much more pure than even myself.
Yeah, definitely. And I know, for instance, in my community, so to speak, children are spoken down to so many times as if they're little minnows and as if they don't have any value in anything that they say. But as you said, they are our returning ancestors, and they probably have a lot more knowledge than we do. We just don't realize it until, as you said, when they give you those golden nuggets of food for thought.
Yes, exactly. And then also just, again, the perspective and initiation. So we know we're all trying to build the world we want to see, starting with ourselves first and foremost. But everything that I'm saying to my children, the things that I'm doing with my children, the things that they're seeing, that they're exposed to, all of that is shaping them. And so if I'm trying to build the world that I want to see, and starting with myself, then that's very closely attached to my children, because the things I say to them, that's going to become their inner self-talk and how they think and how they value and all of that. So I'm, again, just really, really grateful for the knowledge that I am still learning and still working to apply. I'm absolutely not perfect, and I haven't arrived at anything, but I am really grateful to be guided by the principles that I'm guided by.
Duahuatani, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, sorry, the sound just gone a bit strange. Yeah.
Okay, I can hear you fine.
Okay, Duahu. Well, anyway, as I said, Duahu, for your input for today. And many mothers will learn from what you've shared. So, Duahu for that, Hatani.
Nini, thank you for having me. Wow.
Okay, Nini, and all the best to the children.
Okay, Duahu.
Iriru.
Okay. Iriru.
Iriru.
Ujjayi. Yeah, we just want to give you like a short announcement, really, like some Earth Center.
Yeah, we've got one last guest coming up. We just got to give you some details. The Earth Center's website, www.theearthcenter.org, center spelled CENTER, and the UK website is www.theearthcenteruk.com. You can email us on enquiries-uk@theearthcenter.org. Telephone number 0208-558-3678.
The Coventry.
We're going to play a video now from Nebnaba Lamusa Denebig entitled Making of the Loser, Excuses for the Slave Mentality.
From where we are now. I always tell people, try to see how we can make a different paradigm that's sensible from where we are now. I always tell people that they need to understand the difference between a winner and a loser. Trying to do something and not succeeding doesn't make you a loser. Getting somewhere without having to fight for it or go through all the challenge that leads there doesn't make you a winner either. So, there is no better winner than the person that went every step, challenged themselves every step, face every challenge and then reach there. Then the person can call himself a winner. Well, there is no worse loser, or call it better loser, worse loser, I don't know how you want to put it, but there is no perfect loser than the one that can come up with a reason why they're losing. The person that will come and explain why they're losing, or why they lost, or call it whatever you want to put it. That is a loser. Because explaining involves the idea of making it to make sense. Explaining involves the idea of what? Proving that your loss is acceptable, is reasonable, is whatever you want to put it. So really, a person that that spends the time explaining why they are on the bottom of a ladder, instead of trying to understand why that is not acceptable. That is the loser. It's almost like somebody is sitting. You tell them, hey, sir or mom, you're sitting in the mud. Get out of that. And then they say, well, you have to understand why I'm sitting in the mud. It's all, well, it's because When I was a slave, my grandfather days, the world that, hey, just get up. You see? So that's how you create a loser. That's why in every society we create. The society itself creates a loser. They create losers. They create those who really are very good and ingenious into explaining why they are a loser. And that fits the reason, that fits how people that have been known for the last, few centuries to be on the bottom of the ladder. And whenever people from the original culture try to tell them, look, that's not right, let's get up. And then they go, well, you understand, there is this going on, there is that going on, there is that going on, there is that going on. No, it's not about that. It's about changing. It's about changing. Really, wherever you are now, you have to understand it's just a result of a way of thinking and a way of living your life. If it's a way of understanding your surrounding, that's what led you to where you are now. Which means, if you want to be somewhere else, that will have to involve a new way of thinking, a new way of understanding your surrounding, a new way of dealing with the world. Okay. So what I'm talking about is very basic, but it looks like it is something revolutionary or something, whatever we call it. No, it's just basic. You're sitting or you're standing in the rain. The only way you will not get wet is get out of the spot you're standing. Move to, the house. Move to, just basic. But we as people, we are put in a position that even that idea look like some revolution, while it's just a basic common sense. That's what you get when a person moves through the world based on the emotion, feelings, because that's a very, very huge corruptible ground. So when people go on these grounds, things might not make sense, but we can feel emotionally attached to it. Things might not be right, but we might feel like we enjoy it. So it's okay. And that's how you get people on the bottom. So there's no mystery in what we call these chains that have been taken from our legs and put in our mind. No. There's no mystery to that. If you see your neighbor or your friend that didn't shower for 2 months, and they smell it, they're stinking, and then you tell them, you know what, my friend, you stink. You need to take a shower. And then they say, okay, sit down, let me explain to you why I stink. Just take a shower. And you don't have to explain why you stink. That's the logic in which black people are put in. You see? That's the logic. We stink. We stink. And there shouldn't be any, shame into thinking that, that's the reality. The world is seen as this way for a very, very long time. We are the only people that are closing our eyes to that. We are the only people in this whole world that go to other people and ask them, please, can you teach me who I am? Please, can you teach me who I should be? We are the only people that do that. You see? There is no mystery to that either. That's how you manage when you get people. Instead of using their brain, they go driven by their heart, driven by what they feel, what they don't feel, what tastes sweet, what doesn't taste sweet, what's, entertains them, what doesn't entertain them. And they're going nowhere. So, you're creating what we call retarded people, because the brain is a monster. And
that was Master Naba. That was Master Naba there explaining about the winner and the loser. And basically we spend a lot of time making up excuses really, right, to justify staying in the same position that we're in. And unless we take those big steps really to go forward, to break that cycle basically, and that's a part of the conditioning where we've been programmed to accept the position that we're in. And that's one of the things with the Earth Center, is kind of giving you that confidence within yourself, that all your struggles, they're all uphill journeys, and they're challenging. And so we're just going to bring in our last guest for the show tonight. And Hatani, would you like to introduce our guest?
Yeah, Hushai Hatani. Ujayi. Would you like to tell the listeners your name, please?
Ujayi, everyone. My name is ZUIRA SAKUHAI, and I'm an initiate. I started my initiation in the New York Earth Center, and I currently live in Maryland.
Okay, and what's the meaning of your name, please, Hatani?
ZUIRA means adored by Ra, and SAKUHAI means protectors of the source of light.
Oh, wow. Okay. And you've been in initiation since when did you say?
I started my initiation 13 years ago.
Okay. Still going strong.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, welcome to the Wisdom of the Nile show. I know this is the first time you've been here.
Yes.
And as you know, today's show is about recognizing the historical achievement that Nebnaba Lamusam or Denebig has brought to us as initiates and brought to humanity. So, as a seasoned Hatani, I'm going to sit back and listen to what you have to share to us, with us today. In regards to the impact that initiation, Nebnaba's works, and the inspiration that it's had on you and your life, your family, etc.
Okay. Before I get started, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you clearly.
Okay. Before I get started, I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge the Prophet Naba, Lamosa Moro Denebig, and my ancestors, as well as all of my brothers and sisters in the Earth Center family, my ancestors, in my family as well. When it comes to how the prophet impacted me, I think it's good for me to start with how I got to the EC. I would say as a child, I was seen as the little girl who had a feistiness about her, who was very inquisitive, who rebelled against those things that were conventional. And as part of my upbringing, I was raised heavily in the church. I come from a very strong Christian background, a lot of pastors, a lot of preachers in my family. And so I always struggled, always answered the tough questions, because I would sit in church and Bible study, and I would think about what I was being taught. I would think about those things that I was reading in the Bible, and I would ask those questions that nobody seemed to ever answer for me. And so at some point, like most of us do, because the reality is, as human beings, we all go through domestication. And domestication is basically our rearing. You know, when we come into this realm, we have those around us who tell us who we are, that tell us how to behave, that tell us how we should think, and that influence everything that we do. So like anybody else, I began to conform. So I became heavily into the church, to the point where I was very active and in leadership. And at some point, I stepped into theology seminary school. And at that time, I was taking, some classes that dealt with the history of religion, the history of the Bible, that just led to so many questions. It was one of those experiences that we often have where you come across information that you really can't ignore. And so in that moment, I had decided that I had no idea where I was headed, but I knew the life that I was living at the time, I could no longer continue to do that. And so I stepped back from my leadership responsibilities in the church. And of course, my family thought I lost my mind. I began to travel the world. I began to study. And I began to look at everything, every Eastern religion, all that we call traditional spiritual systems, even some of the Abrahamic religions. I studied and visited and just absorbed as much information as I could. And everywhere I went, I never felt complete. You know, I felt like I was on this path collecting breadcrumbs that never really satisfied my appetite. And so fast forward a little bit in that journey, I take a trip with the group, and it's a cultural spiritual trip to Egypt. On that trip, I'm with a brother that's a part of that group, who's now my husband, SAKUHAI. And on that trip, in his backpack, he had one of the Firefly magazines. And so at that time, I was going to study and learn, continuing my study, and he had this magazine. I think he had two of them at the time. And I started to read the information, and it piqued my energy. So when we got back to the States, we began looking at and listening to everything that the EC produced, every DVD, every CD, every book that the prophet wrote, every philosophy podium. I've read it all. And what I found, at least what I thought I had found at the time, was a person that was speaking a complete message. The information that I came across answered every question that I had. And the information dealt with humanity. It wasn't a lot of what I found in dealing with other religions and spiritual systems. There were a lot of politics in those things. But the Earth Center knowledge for me was complete, it was comprehensive, and it dealt with the state of humanity and a human being raised in its quality. And so that stood out to me the most. And so At some point, there were opportunities where, prior to my initiation, I had the opportunity to have some readings and discussions with the Prophet novel. There were two high to me, especially that were instrumental in influencing me, and that's Destiny, Mehez, and KEMEERA. They would answer all of my questions and talk to me for hours. And so, after reading everything and talking to them and the Prophet, I myself and then my husband started our process of initiation. And so, for me, when it comes to answering the question, how the Prophet Nab influenced me, he has influenced every aspect of my life. Mm-hmm. The wisdom and knowledge that he gives is very comprehensive. It speaks to everything that deals with what it means to be a human being, how existence is structured, and how we fit within that existence. And that was something that I didn't see in other things. And so it's been my guiding light. What I would say is the initiation allows for, especially those of us who are here in Ma'anu, what we call the United States, you know, we are descendants of those who were subject to the triangle slave trade. And so for many of us, when we look at our history, when we look at our sense of self, when we look at our perception of reality, it's based in a history that's incomplete. And so what the Prophet Naba gives, he allows you to go through the process of deconditioning and then reorienting yourself to that which is reality. You know, and that's a big gift. When you can have your sense of reality reoriented and reconfigured, it allows you, at least in my opinion, to walk in a way that is deliberate, that is thoughtful, and that is empowered. And so what it taught me was that nothing has been lost. You know, our history, our culture is here. There are those, the elders, the deities, the entities that support and walk with us are aware of what we have been experiencing on this side. And there is a bridge that exists that allows us to begin to rebuild from the impact of what we experience as it relates to colonialism. And so it's again, it influences my entire life, from how I parent to how my home is say decorated, to what I eat, to how I heal my body and my children, to how I went about my children's pregnancies and birth and after birth, to how I educate, my decision to homeschool my children. So it really is a comprehensive guiding light to help anyone decondition and reorient themselves back to a sense of reality. So I'll stop there.
There's a lot there to unpack, Hatani, and yeah. So, firstly, having gone through, well, having left the church and be deemed as mad, probably, how did your relatives who are church leaders, how did they react to you and your transformation in initiation?
The initial shock was, okay, she's gone mad. And part of that is because of, I guess, what we would call a personality and how I live. I was seen as a very grounded person, a very thoughtful person. And so for me to step away into something in their view that was so extreme and counter to what they saw as real or normal or acceptable, they were very concerned about me. But as they continued to watch through the years and look at the results, although they don't understand it, they respect my journey. Mm-hmm. They respect it, yeah. Okay. So they no longer fight against it. They respect the path that I've chosen for myself and my family.
Wonderful, wonderful. Has any of them been impacted by knowing that the 77 commandments exist?
Some have. I would say I have an older brother who I've talked to him, I would say, the most about the information that I have been given. And so I've shared things like the 77, the Human Code of Divine Ordinances, the 77 commandments, as well as some of our literature like the philosophy podium and those sorts of things. So I would say the most impact is there. I would say my greatest impact is more on the spiritual side of things, because I've been able to, and I've had the opportunity to go to Medita. I've had the opportunity to have tons of spiritual work done to begin to clean up my bloodline, to do a lot of offerings for different family members, as well as to open the mouths of some of my ancestors. And so I can see in my family, those that are living, the results of some of that work that I've done.
And are they aware of that?
Yes, I share it with them. I do.
Okay. And being Christians, how appreciative are they of that, knowing that they don't generally even acknowledge ancestors?
Well, I wouldn't say appreciative, because I think the way that they think, it doesn't allow them the space to do that. I think it's just kind of honoring and having a basic sense of gratitude for my effort in trying to do those things on behalf of our family. Okay. So, yeah.
You mentioned that you homeschool your children. How many do you have, and what are their ages?
I have 2, and my daughter is 13. Her name is Sophia, and my son is Kaniva, who's 9. And both of them have been able to have their readings for their names and to get an understanding of why they are here in this incarnation. I was able to have those things for them and work done for them when I was pregnant with them. And there was work that I've been doing for them since they've been born. Okay. So, yeah.
And so when you homeschool them, how much of interaction do they have with peers that are not homeschooled? And what influence have they had on those peers?
I would say for my children, because they have been steeped in the knowledge of the EC since they've been born. And so they're very different than their peers. But from my observations, they have served as an inspiration of sorts, because they stand out. Their sense of reality is very different, and the way that they do things is very different than the traditional American child that's raised in a mainstream way. And so they've been able to influence, the mindsets of their friends, even sometimes the habits and things that, other children may do that they don't do. So, yeah.
That's good. That's excellent.
Yeah.
Hipsa, did you have any questions? Okay, so Hattani, did you actually meet Nebnaba?
I did not meet him in person. Every conversation I had was on the phone.
Okay.
Yes.
So would you like to share anything with us regarding Makaru? I mean, we didn't even have the privilege of speaking to him.
Yeah. I mean, his humility and the depth and breadth of his wisdom is not anything that I've ever seen. Anything I've ever seen. His simplicity and how he would answer my questions, and just his clarity was just amazing to even have the opportunity to speak with him. He didn't, when I started my initiation, he had transitioned not soon after that. So I didn't have the opportunity to actually meet him.
Okay. But
Yeah.
you've been to his home in Merita,
Yes.
and how could you explain to the listeners the humble environment in which he's grown and what he's achieved on a world scale?
Let's see. I think not really to speak to the humble environment that he was raised in. I think when you get the opportunity to see an environment that has not been colonized and to meet someone or engage with people who haven't been infected with what we have experienced here, it creates a sense of harmony and just balance on every level. And so I think it's really, getting to physically see what that looks like and understanding that it is possible for me to do the work to begin to get back to that. So I think that's what it does for anybody who has the opportunity to, especially from here, with this experience, to go back and to see something like that. To even know that it exists.
Yeah.
To even know that it exists and to know that there's an opportunity to, like I said, an opportunity for us to step back to that. And that process takes time. What I realized too is that it's a process. It takes time. When you go into an environment where culture and values have been preserved for thousands of years, it kind of helps you to think about the realistic expectations we should have for those on this side. Because it takes a lot of consistency, commitment, deliberateness. It takes a lot to develop that sense of quality and then be able to maintain it for that amount of what we call time. So, yeah.
I mean, for many of us, it would take more than one lifetime. I'm sure.
Yeah, it would.
Yeah.
It would.
And obviously, your children have gone to pilgrimage now, have they?
They have been to Merita as well. They haven't done the official pilgrimage per se, but they've been to Merita several times in different parts of Merita as well. They're currently, just to share, they're part of the second generation online. So they have officially started their initiation through the EC with the second generation.
Wonderful. Yeah. So, excuse me, Hatsune.
And how has the initiation so far impacted on them?
They're very interested in it, but again, because this is what they know, from the time that they were born, this is what they live, so it's a part of their day-to-day life. So I just see it as a next level in their process because, after a certain age, traditionally, our children are supposed to step into their formal initiation. And so I kind of see this as the next natural step in their development. And so they're open. They love it. They look forward to class. They're engaged in class. And so I'm grateful for that. Yeah.
Hatsune, you mentioned their birth, and probably, I mean, I've got two children, and they were born in a hospital the colonial way. How much different is it, for those who don't know, how much different is it to give birth in the traditional sense?
Well, I think, I was blessed to have a home birth. And so, first of all, the way, I would say the way that this Western system goes about birth, it's very mechanical. It's almost as if they treat you as if you are sick. And so it's a lot of technology involved. It's a lot of things that have nothing to do with the spirit. There's no spirituality in it. So there's no sense of that this is an ancestor that's coming. None of that. And so I would say from having a home birth side and then having the opportunity to experience a traditional form of birth, for example, with my daughter, I didn't have ultrasounds, which is a very standard part of delivering in the United States. I didn't have all of the blood work taken. She didn't get the immunizations and shots when she was born. When I was born, her placenta was very traditionally the way it was supposed to. But then during her birth, I was able to have readings done to kind of make sure things were okay. And so from a traditional sense, there is a way that pregnancies are governed and managed and monitored, but it's not like we do here. Not at all. Not at all. Yeah.
And you mentioned she didn't have the vaccinations from the system.
Right.
So
right.
What do the traditions do in order to protect their children from?
Well, when you're
go on.
Well, there are several things. So there are herbs that you get. So first of all, there's a way that the first thing after birth, the placenta is buried in a particular way. And the burying of the placenta supports this ancestor's journey into this physical realm. It helps them transition from being from one dimension to this physical dimension. But then they have certain amulets or jewelry, we can say. Some is for protection. Some is to help with certain aspects of physical development. And then they have herbs that I was given to bathe them in to help build their strength, as well as there's a traditional spiritual bath that you give until the baby reaches a certain stage of development, to help them transition and develop strong as well. So I was able to do both of that with both of my children.
That's beautiful. And I ask, compared to, and I'm being presumptuous here, so I'm presuming that you have siblings who have children.
Yeah.
So are your children, would you say that your children are generally more healthy than the ones who didn't receive these spiritual herbal baths and everything that your children received?
Yes, I would definitely say that. A lot of my nieces and nephews, they have, allergies per se. I would say that's one common thing. They have a lot of skin issues, some of them. They have like asthma, weight issues. So definitely the health piece, even though they're young, is very different than what my children have experienced. Yeah.
Wow. It's really a beautiful, wonderful thing that you could have experienced those things in the United States.
Yeah, yeah.
And due to what Master Naba has brought to us. It's really amazing what he's achieved and still is achieving for us. And just pray that the Earth Center, more people actually listen, learn, and move towards their true spiritual destinies.
Yeah.
Is there a favorite quote from the Makaru or a chapter that you'd like to share?
Yes, I wanted to read. There's a collection of short stories in a booklet called The Initiatic Tales of Hejta that the Prophet did. And there is one story to me that just speaks to me personally, but it speaks to what a lot of, I would say, people like me may feel or experience being in this Western environment. Because, you know, we can see that what we're doing is not working, but sometimes you can feel defeated when you're trying to go through your day-to-day life, trying to survive while trying to do something different in an environment that's completely counter to what you are trying to achieve. And that can be very disheartening. This story to me gives perspective. It has taught me to have patience. It has helped me to have realistic expectations of what it will take to get back to what we would consider ideal. It has also empowered me to know that every step that we take on the path of restoring that which is our traditions and reclaiming the dignity of our ancestors and our bloodlines, it matters. So not to feel discouraged, not to feel like you're not winning. Just know that everything that you do, no matter how small you think it is one step closer to where we need to be. And so the name of this story is called The Order of Things. Knowing how to establish the order of values is important. The story I'm going to tell was, to me, by one of my uncles long ago. I was a young adolescent in search of the best decisions, hoping that these decisions would have a good effect on my future adult life. I had the habit of dreaming. To protect myself in my dreams, I contemplated many futures based on choices and values that I was being given to select. The traditional initiatic education or the seductive modern education. One does not jump over a snake to go look for a stick with which to kill it, my uncle would say. I never understood exactly what he was trying to say, but I imagined a very dangerous snake on my back. In my imagination, I should admit that it is wiser for people in my situation to return and prepare themselves before moving forward towards the future. But my youth and my lack of experience always made me imagine myself agile and strong, jumping with all my force over snakes and looking for a stick that I could use to kill them. But one thing is not normal. If I jump over a snake and leave it behind me, how much sense would it make to go back into my path to attack the snake that I didn't kill? I am forced to admit that one simply does not jump over a snake and then go back for a stick to kill it. Of course, it is not a life to base one's life on. It is not a life to base one's life on one's capability of running from challenges. We like to run from life's challenges by reducing them to the dimensions of our illusions. For example, it is not easy to see an enemy in our neighbor or in our system, in our government, which cleverly places us in the logic of war, with the goal of distracting us and making us worry about something other than the quality, the society that they are administering. Knowing how to establish the order of values is very important if we do not want to find ourselves spending all of our lives on things that only last days, months, or years. The initiatic education teaches that at the fall of Mizra, or Hejta, Egypt, all families and lineages crossed the Sahara Desert, led by a young prince called Heruya, whose name signifies a small horse. The families came with the goal of reorganizing the defense of the land and the city where they were to still be part of the vital initiatic secret. The city was called a name that meant City of Reunification. And the City of Reunification all the lineages found themselves with a new dilemma. Should they quickly reorganize a offensive, or should they start by preserving and reinforcing the civilization? Haruyah was for the war against the invaders, but the priests, blacksmiths, shoemakers, and scribes were not of the same opinion. Our gods don't even have temples. Our dead don't even have offering tables for their sepulchral food, they were saying. Seeing that the youth were not totally convinced about the importance of preservation, a young priest got up with a small jar that he placed in the middle of the crowd. He asked them that they bring him big rocks. He placed the big rocks in the jar until the jar was full. At the end, he raised his eyes towards the public that was wondering what game was he playing. Then he asked them, "Is this jar full?" "Yes," answered the public in chorus. At the moment, he asked people to bring him small stones. He poured the small stones on top of the big rocks, and while he shook the jar, the small stones filled the space between the big rocks. When there was no place left for any small stones in the jar, the priest then asked the public that was marveling, "So is this jar full?" A long silence imposed itself. "Maybe it is full," said a voice in the crowd. "Very well," said the priest. He asked that sand be brought, and when he started pouring the sand in the jar, one could see that the sand now was occupying the space between the small stones. When the jar was not able to absorb the sand, the priest asked his question, "Is this jar full?" "No," answered the crowd. "Very well," said the priest. He asked for water to be brought. He then filled the jar with water. You see, there is an order of values. This is the only way we can fill a jar with water. Sand, small stones, and big rocks in the context of harmony in the existence. If one does not first place the big rocks, it will be practically impossible to have them all together in the same jar," added the priest. To the questions about the big rocks of our lives, the priest answered, "Gods, civilization, cultures, moral values, spiritual values." Haruyah was discouraged in his preparation for war against forces of evil, and all the energies of the people were invested in the preservation of the human civilization through cultural diversity. This is why the enemy of the world presented itself later with different religious systems with the goal of attacking the basis of the human existence, the existence of the pantheons of the gods. That's the end of the story. And so to me, that story, even though it's talking about a different point in history, those of us who are here, we can see ourselves in that. But again, like I said, I think it gives us a sense of realistic expectations to have, what it takes to do it, what our goals should be. Should we focus on battling the system, or should we give our energy to those things that support the preservation that will lead to civilizations, that will lead to cultures, that will support values that matter? And so the EC has been that bridge. It gives us that guiding light. It gives us that path so we can focus on the preservation of those things that matter. And so that story is just, it's one that really dear to my heart. So, yeah.
Well, dua Louisa Hatani, and I think that there's nothing more to be said on this. I think you've just wrapped up the show.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Yeah, definitely. And Nahibso?
No, that was, yeah, I'll let you conclude.
Yeah, it's been really good to listen to you, learn from you, and your powerful testimony.
Wow.
Yeah, and hopefully we can speak with yourself and your children at some stage. because initiation is for everyone, regardless of your age or your color or your religious persuasion. Initiation is for everyone. It's for humanity, you know. And yeah, it will be interesting to speak to your children. Yeah, so we can definitely set that up at some stage. We do have a youth corner that Hatsuni Catasta deals with. So maybe they could come in on that show. But yeah, it's important for people to see the next generation of youth who are in initiation, living in the West, and know that it is possible. And I brought up the 77 commandments before the Code of Human Behavior, because when we're only forced to live our lives by the 10 and see that it's leading us nowhere other than downhill fast, then this is another thing, one of the gifts that Nebnaba has brought to the world, to help us to raise our spiritual, moral qualities and principles. So, yes, Hatsuni, I'd like to say duo again, and we've got to wrap up the show now.
Yes. Duo, thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
No, you're welcome. So, Iriru and Nita duo.
Iriru.
So, for anyone that doesn't know, the Earth Center is on all social media. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, and YouTube. Okay, so Facebook is the Earth Center and the Earth Center of UK. On Instagram, it's KEBTAH, KEBTAH, and also the Earth Center of UK. And on YouTube, it's KEBTAH, where you will find, as you heard from other initiates, many resources, videos, lectures to watch, take notes, learn from, and elevate. So I'd like to thank Master Naba for what he's brought to the world. I'd like to thank my Hatanis, Naba Irita, for bringing this to the UK. Like to thank my ancestors for bringing me through the doors of initiation. And I'd like to thank all the Hatanis that have stood fast and continued the mission of the Makaroo, Nebnabala Musa Maradenebig, and it's the initiates that make the school. So we do have orientations coming up across many of the temples where doors of initiation will be opening for anyone who wishes to embark upon this initiatic journey. You can go to the websites www.theearthcenter.org to find all the branches of the organization. It is an international organization, and there's opportunities to sit in on classes, or one class each, to get a taste of what initiation is. And anything else, Nahibso?
Well, that's one of the main things, really, that people can get that taste of, really, isn't it? That gives them a good insight, really, as a starting point, really.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll wrap it up. We've run over time, but it was worth doing for this historical event, i.e. institution, i.e. the Earth Center, brought to us by Dogon High Priest and Master Healer Nebnabala Musa Maradenibig.
And we just want to say, personally, I want to say Netador to the Makaroo, because, you know, this information is invaluable. And, you know, it's only when you kind of, you speak to people out there, when you see the mindset of where people are at, you know, then you realize how important this knowledge really is. And most of all, it's authentic. You know, it's not what's being plagiarized and given to us like from the Western society. So it's a good opportunity to kind of to get back and rekindle with your culture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So until next week, where Catastrophe Kara will be in the seat, sharing some more initiatic knowledge. When we will see you then. So dua everyone for listening.
Mm-hmm.
And Iriru, see you soon.
Yeah, for all the initiates actually partake in the show as well tonight.
The dua will ease off all the initiates. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for Bless Radio for giving us this platform. Yeah. All right, Iriru.
Iriru.
Say, emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Have no fear for atomic energy, 'cause none of them can stop the time. They, the man of wisdom, definition of humanity. This song goes in the memory of the beloved prophet Nebnabala Musa Morodinabig, the doggone prince, Mahir, the truth teller, Bisinabasa, which means I'll be appreciated after I'm gone. He's the man who overcome the devils with love. He's the man who speaks because he has something to say. The man of wisdom, the definition of humanity. Mahir, Mahir, Mahir. Come from far away, from far away, from far away, from far away, Prophet Naba, far away, Musa, far away, from far away, Prophet, from far away, Prophet Naba, far away, from far away, from far away, Prophet, from far away. He's the man of wisdom. He's the man who lived by faith, and not by fear. His greatest wealth is the richness of his soul. He's the man who lived by faith and not by fear. He's the double-edged sword. He's the double-edged sword. He's the key to unlock the treachery. Follow truth and you shall find him. He's the definition of humanity. He's the beginning and the end. He's the prophet Naba. Far away, from far away, from far away, from far away, Prophet Naba. Far away, Musa. Far away, from far away, Prophet. From far away, Prophet Naba. Far away, from far away, from far away, Prophet. From far away. Bob Marley say, emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Have no fear for atomic energy, 'cause none of them can stop the time. How long shall they kill our prophet while we stand aside and look? Some say it's just a part of it. We gotta fulfill it, we gotta fulfill it. Come to my head, come to my head. Come to Maheru. Come to Maheru. Come to Maheru. Come. You got your own told story. Come from far away. Come from far away.